Hey class, welcome to Unit 8. Last week, remember that we looked at relationships between two quantitative variables. And we used a test for regression or for slope to determine if there was a significant relationship. In Unit 8, we continue our module on learning how to do hypothesis tests to establish whether there are significant relationships or not. But in this week, we actually look at the relationship between two categorical variables or qualitative variables. So for example, we might want to know, is there evidence of a significant relationship between gender and favorite sport? Are males more likely to like certain sports that are different than the sports that females tend to like? And especially in the social sciences, there are plenty of studies that we could do that would require us to look at relationships. Perhaps you might want to know if there's a relationship between type of substance and type of treatment. That maybe certain drugs tend to, people who have abuse with certain types of drugs might have better outcomes with certain types of treatments versus others. So it'll be an interesting unit. And we're in the discussion, we're actually going to be going back and using the same website that we used last week. So luckily last week you learned how to save a text file and then import a text file into Excel so that you could then use Excel to do the analysis part. And we'll still be doing something similar. There are a few new things that I have to show you because the way that we analyze categorical variables is different than the way we analyze quantitative variables. And in fact, the name of the type of test that you'll be learning this week to look at the relationship between categorical variables is called a chi-square test. And there are different types of chi-square test, although in this course, we're going to focus on learning the chi-square test of independence. So let's go ahead and get back to the website that you'll be using for the discussion, which you should recognize this from last week. Last week, you went to the search by statistical method and put in multiple regression. This week, you're going to click on chi-square test. There are not that many different data sets presented. You see here, there's only 23 different ones. And in fact, a few of them are not really going to be very easy to use or all really that appropriate for the type of test we're learning. So I want to spend, a minute or two just clicking on some of the different cases and helping you to decide whether a particular case looks like a good one to use for the discussion or not. So let's first go to the very top one, ball player births. You're going to be looking for two variables that are categorical. So really, you're going to be looking for at least two columns that have names down the column. So ball player count is really not a categorical variable. Those are just frequencies. Months of the year is a categorical variable. And in fact, there's 12 different months and they've just been coded with numbers rather than names. But this is not really going to be that appropriate for a chi-square test of independence because you don't, besides month, all you have are frequencies. You don't really have another categorical variable. So I would not do ball player births. On the other hand, car origins, when we click on that, you'll see we've got what we want. We've got two columns and the origin is just the name of the type of car, whether they are American cars. And if you click later down, you'll probably see that I know at least it goes through, it has names of either American cars or European for the different types, but certainly a categorical variable. And then the other variable is type of driver. You've got staff, and if you go back, you've also got student drivers. So this would be one that would be appropriate. And if they don't have stories that come along with them, you can kind of be creative and make up your own. I mean, with something like this, it was probably a matter of looking, the research question would be, is there an association between the type of driver and the type of car that they drive? Are students more likely to drive American cars and staff more likely to drive European cars or vice versa? Or maybe we'll find out that there's not a significant relationship between type of driver and type of car. So that would certainly be appropriate. That's the kind of thing you'll be looking for as you browse through the data sets. Cranberry juice, you click on that. There's no story here, but if you look through, this is also going to be appropriate because infection is just going to be a yes or a no. If you keep on scrolling farther down, you'll see that, you eventually get to some yeses and some nos. And so that is categorical. And then type of treatment. Looks like cranberry juice is one type of treatment. lactobacillus, and I think earlier I saw that there was a control group that was not receiving any sort of treatment. So that would also be appropriate. And there, of course, the research question is going to be, since the title is cranberry juice, something like, is there an association between cranberry juice and preventing infection or something to that effect? And as I said, you can be a little bit creative, but certainly in the research question, you'll want to include the word relationship or association, because that's primarily what you're looking at with this type of chi-squared test. So that would also be appropriate. Education by age. This would also be fine. You've got two categorical variables. Type of education, whether somebody got just 1 to 3 years of college, or let's skip further down, not a high school grad. There's probably some other categories mixed in there. And then the second column is age, but it's not age as a quantitative variable, it's age as a categorical, because it's got age groups. So this would also be appropriate. Research question being, is there an association between age and type of education or years of education that somebody has? So as you can see, there's going to be a lot of these that work, but because there's only 23 different data sets here, and not all of them are going to be appropriate, then we may have to double up a little bit, and some students, may have to repeat and use the same data set. That's okay. We'll still get some good conversation going. Do try to mix things up. You don't want everybody to be choosing the same data set. So, look through your classmates' post, and if you see that somebody's already done something, try, your best to maybe pick a different file. But there are definitely plenty of things here. Fish diet, we can look and see that this works. Whether a diet has large amounts of fish or small amounts of fish, and this one actually has a little story that goes with it. And whether someone eventually got cancer or not. So, you could look at the association that eating fish or fish in your diet plays with, possibly getting cancer or not. So that would be fine. Most of these are going to work. Full moon will also be okay. That'll be just fine. You look at the type of criminal offense, and there are different types if you keep going down, types of criminal offense, and that is certainly categorical. And then whether there was a full moon or not. Research question, establishing, is there evidence of a relationship between crime, type of crime, and whether there's a full moon or not, something to that effect. So definitely some stuff you can choose from here, but just realize, they're not, some of them won't be, let me see, lottery numbers I think was one. Yeah, lottery numbers would not really be a good one, because it's hard to tell any categorical variable here. It's just Powerball numbers. That would not be one that you would want to choose. It just doesn't look appropriate like all of the other ones did. So hopefully I've shown you enough that you can kind of see the pattern and the types of data sets that I said would be good ones to use. I want to illustrate and really take you from start to finish on the discussion, just mainly because there is one new skill that you'll have to learn in Excel, and that is creating a pivot table. And some of you may already know how to do it, but if not, I definitely want to show you all that, because you'll need to do that in order to get the data sets ready for analyzing them with a chi-squared test of independence. So I'm going to actually choose the Montana data set. If we open this, also looks appropriate. It's got political party and gender. So of course the research question would be, is there a relationship between gender and political party? Certainly, one that we can relate to and understand what it's talking about, even though they did not give us a story here. So I have already downloaded it on my desktop, but you would normally just go through the procedure of coming up here, clicking on download text file, very similar to what you did last week in Unit 7. You would click on that and you would go ahead and download this file to wherever you want to save it. But like I said, I've already done that. So after you save it, you're going to open up your Excel program. And remember, that website only allows you to save text files. We've got to actually import the text file into Excel. So we're going to go up here to Data, just like you did last week, and then from text/CSV, import data from a text file. So I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to go find my file. This one was called Montana. And once you get the pop up here and it looks like it's showing, the data showing, you go ahead and click load. I'm going to X out this box over here. And there you have it. This time you're going to probably see some little drop down arrows. That is because this data is being presented already in a sort of a pivot table, but I've got to show you how to get a pivot table that actually includes frequencies or counts. You'll be reading about that in your text this week, but we're going to need frequencies as numbers. Like, in other words, how many male Democrats are there? How many female Republicans are there? How many male Republicans, and so forth. This does not show the counts or the frequencies. So I will be showing you how to create a pivot table that will show the counts and frequencies. So what you're going to want to do to create the pivot table is you are going to want to come up here to insert. Now notice it does say summarize with pivot table. If that's already showing up, you can click on that. But on some of the data sets, when I was browsing through them, I noticed that didn't show up. So if it doesn't show up, you can just come up here and click insert. And then pivot table should be over here to your left. So insert pivot table. And you will get a pop-up like this. It's going to say select the table or range. Well, notice it's already got my entire data set selected. But if not, you would just take your mouse and click and drag over all of these. In fact, I'm going to come up here and really highlight all of the columns and everything. It may already have that done, but otherwise you would just keep scrolling down, making sure, clicking and dragging your mouse, and making sure that you click and drag your mouse over all of the data. This one goes all the way down to row 204. Then it totally depends on you. If you want to do your work in the same sheet, then you can just click existing worksheet and click your mouse in the location box. And it's wanting you to then put a cell number on where you want it to start the pivot table. So I'm just going to click right here, anywhere where there's wide open space. And notice it put that cell name right here. Okay, actually, I think I want to go up farther because I forgot that I had scrolled way down. So let me go up here and actually take that out, delete, and click farther up on the spreadsheet. So I'll click there. It's got that now in the location. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And when I do that, it now should have all of this pivot table looking stuff over here on the right. You do not want to X that out because we're getting ready to use this. All right. So you've got two columns. Now the headings are column 1 and column 2 in this data set, but they may be other sort of names when you use different sets. But they should correspond to your two columns that are both categorical variables. So what you're going to do is take one of them, and it honestly doesn't matter what order. So I'm going to take the column 1, and you're going to click and drag one of them down to the rows box. You'll then take the other one and click and drag it to the columns box. And notice Excel is starting to build your pivot table, but there's still not any numbers in there. So the next thing you want to do is take either one. It does not matter. I'm going to click on column 2, and you'll come and click and drag it down to the values box. And as soon as you lift up your mouse there, you'll notice it's put in some numbers. Okay. Now, what has happened here, though, and this is why you want to glance through your pivot table that results. This is called a pivot table. But sometimes there's sort of strange data that should be sort of pretty obvious to notice, or missing data. So what you want to do is come up here to these little drop downs that are now a part of the pivot table and click on them. And if you see strange things, you just want to uncheck those boxes because maybe there's missing data. Like if it had a box but no name there, you would want to exclude it because it's like missing data. In this case, it doesn't have any missing data, but for political parties, it's got the name party. But we want names of political parties like Democrat, Independents, Republicans. So party, actually, the reason it resulted is because they almost had two column headings. If you look up here, they also had column heading for party and sex. We don't want those to be treated like certain political parties. We don't want the name party to be treated like a type of political party. We don't want the name sex to be treated like a type of gender. So what we're going to do is uncheck the party box. We don't want that to be treated as a type of political party. Click OK. And notice it took it out. Here I want to click on this one and take out sex because, as we said, that's not really supposed to be considered a type of gender. And take that out. And now you see that everything looks the way it should, meaning We only have Democrats, Independents, Republicans for our political parties. We only have male and female for our genders. All right, but this is in pivot table format. And when you're going to use Excel to create the type of bar charts that we want to learn this week that are called segmented bar charts, you cannot have the data in a pivot table to do that. So the next thing you want to do is highlight or click and highlight the entire pivot table and then click Control C for Control Copy. Notice it highlighted it. I'm going to then come down to more open space, but don't do a regular Control V paste. You're going to come up here to paste and do a paste special. We've been doing a lot of paste specials in this course with Excel. You want to click on paste specials, but you just want only the values to transfer, not the actual pivot table parts with the drop downs and stuff. So I'm going to click on the values radio button and then click OK. And notice it has taken out those little filters, okay? But we've got to clean up our pivot table a little bit. And what that means is we only just want the gender names and the political party names. We don't want any totals. We don't want any names that say count of column 2 or row labels. So I'm going to click on that, press delete. Click on that, press delete. Row labels, press delete. And any total rows or columns, I'm going to delete them. So grand total, I'm going to click and drag my mouse, press delete. And grand total row, click and drag my mouse and press delete. So it's a lot of cleaning it up. All we see is what we want to see. The political party names here, the gender names here, those are our two categorical variables, political party and gender. And we've got now the counts for how many Democrat females there were, how many Democrat males, how many independent females, and so forth. So we've got exactly what we need. So part of your discussion this week at the end will say, do a segmented bar chart or a double bar chart with your variables using Excel. Insert the image using the snipping tool, okay? And then discuss what you notice from your graph, what association you notice. So to do the segmented bar graph, now that you've got your regular two-way table, all you do is highlight it. And you come up here to Insert, and you go to the bar chart looking icon here, but click the drop down and the segmented bar chart. This one's the double bar chart, which you can see there. But honestly, with frequencies, that's not the better one to use because you really wanted percentages on the vertical axis instead of frequencies. So the better one to use here is going to be to come over here where it gives you percentages and do what's called a segmented bar chart. It says stacked column, but a fancier name for it is segmented bar chart. So I'm going to click on this one. If you want to organize it by political party, then it's already set up for that. If it makes more sense to you to analyze it by gender, then that's easy to switch the bars. All I'm going to do is take my mouse and right click somewhere in the white space of the chart. And I want to right click until I see, so actually let me click outside for a second and now right click in there. I'll know when I see what I want to see. All right, that's what I want to see. So right click until you see, notice maybe I had to go down to the bottom to get it to work, but until you see this menu pop up. And if you want to switch your horizontal axis to gender instead of political party, all you got to do is come in here and select data in the middle. And then in the middle, click the switch row column. Right there, click that tab. And notice, click OK. It quickly and easily changed it to where the bars are organized by gender. That might be a little bit easier to analyze. I'll move this over to the side. And this would be what you would want to save and upload as an attachment to your discussion post. But you'll want to use your snipping tool and actually snip the chart and include that, inside your response. So we don't have to go open up the attachment and so forth. That would certainly, you don't need to snip these, but you want to snip your graph and include that. Now, if there was no relationship, then what we would see here is that we would see that the both bars look fairly the same in terms of sections. So like if the blue section were roughly the same size, the orange section roughly the same size, the gray section roughly the same size, then that would indicate does not appear to be any association between gender and political party, because they're roughly the same no matter what the gender. But when you start seeing different segments within the bars, that starts hinting at the fact that there might be a significant relationship between gender and political preference. So we don't know for sure because we haven't run our chi-squared test and looked at the test statistic and p-value yet. But it certainly is hinting at the fact there's a relationship, because we see females with a larger percentage being Democrat than males, and males with a larger percentage being both Republicans and independents. Okay, so anyway, so that's the segmented bar chart. Now to do the actual chi-squared test of independence, what you'll want to do is down here just either take a picture or write down on a sheet of paper these counts and what categories they go with, because then I've included a chi-squared Excel worksheet for you that'll actually allow you to input these counts, and it will go ahead and automatically calculate the expected counts. You'll be reading about that in your text, as well as the chi-squared test statistic and the p-value, so that you can then make your decision, figure out what your conclusion is in context, whether you reject the null or not, and whether you do or do not have enough evidence to say that there's a significant relationship between gender and political preference. All right, so I'm going to now go ahead and open up that worksheet that's been provided for you in this discussion. Here's what it looks like, and we can go ahead and take our mouse and delete anything that was already there and just start entering our numbers. Now ours have 2 columns down and 3 rows across, so we're going to be typing in 48, 36. These numbers came straight from our pivot table from our Excel work that we just did. Then 16, then 24, 33, and 45. All right, and notice once you press enter there, it already calculates your expected counts, the contribution of each category. So for example, we look down here at our chi-squared test statistic, roughly 4.85, 2 degrees of freedom, and our p-value is 0.08. Well, I'm going to leave that up to y'all to interpret that in case anybody does this data set, but remember you're going to be comparing it to 0.05. So you should be able to decide whether you will reject the null or fail to reject the null. And just in simplistic terms, if you fail to reject the null when you're doing a chi-squared test of independence, then you would say that you do not have enough evidence to say that there's an association. If you get a low p-value and you reject the null, then you say, I do have enough evidence to say that there's a significant association. So even though the segmented bar chart may have appeared like there might be an association, if it's not a strong enough one, then we have to just say that that's probably just random variation that we're seeing. When we get the low p-values and we reject the null, that's when we say we've got strong enough evidence to say that there are significant differences going on and that there is a significant association. And then you'll want to be able to tell what is contributing the most to that significant association. That's where these contribution numbers will come in handy. But anyway, we'll be talking about all this in the discussion. The main thing through the video is to show you how you can decide on your data set, get it imported into Excel, how to create the pivot table, how to then do your segmented bar chart, and then how to take the numbers in the two-way table and transfer them here to the chi-squared worksheet provided for you so that you can get your test statistic and p-value. And then, of course, we'll work on interpretation throughout the discussion together with each other. So hopefully that's helpful for you, and you'll be able to get through the pivot tables and the Excel part of it, and then we'll just work on the interpretation part.